I never thought my life could unravel this quickly. One minute, I was living what I believed was a normal, stable relationship, sharing bills, meals, and quiet nights on the couch with him. And the next, everything I thought I knew about my life, about us, was a lie. I don't know where to start, my girlfriend's sister confessed to me days later, her voice trembling over the phone. I'm sitting in my car at 3 a.m. because I can't go back to the apartment. What I found out, it's like the ground beneath me disappeared. I sat there, gripping the steering wheel in the empty parking lot, heart hammering, my mind spinning. I was 28, finishing my degree in criminal justice while working nights as a security officer downtown, balancing bills, textbooks, and the illusion of a stable life. I'd always prided myself on being dependable, practical, and yet, in the span of a single weekend, everything I thought was true had shattered. Sloan, my girlfriend of 6 years, the woman I trusted, the woman I shared my life with, she had been living a secret life I never suspected. As I scrolled through social media that night, the images hit me like a physical blow. Her, smiling, intimate, with a man I'd never met, at parties I thought she was attending with her friends. And the dates. They were during the time she'd claimed to be elsewhere, out of town, visiting her sister. I couldn't believe it. My own home, my own life, had been a backdrop for someone else's deception. Every shared expense, every quiet dinner, every late-night conversation, all of it a lie in her mind. And now she had the audacity to act like nothing had happened, like I was the one who had been controlling, untrusting, too clingy, while she orchestrated a double life with precision and calculation. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my shaking hands. I knew that in the next few days, my world would completely change. I didn't yet understand how deep the manipulation ran, how many people had been drawn into her web of lies. But I felt it in my bones. Nothing would ever be the same. And in that quiet, lonely parking lot, as I sat staring at the flickering streetlights, I realized one terrifying truth. I had been living with a stranger for 6 years, and she had just revealed who she truly was. I'm 28. Finishing my degree in criminal justice through community college, working nights as a security officer downtown. It's not glamorous, and I make about $42,000 a year, but I've always been proud of how I manage my life. I've got a routine, a home I love, and a dog, Rusty, who's been my companion through long nights and lonely study sessions. I met Sloan, or rather Sean, 6 years ago at a mutual friend's party. He was charming, funny, effortlessly magnetic. I was drawn to him immediately, not just by his humor, but by the way he seemed to notice me in a room full of people. We clicked in a way that felt instant, natural, like we were two halves of a puzzle finally aligning. Our relationship grew quickly. At first, it was exciting. Weekend trips, spontaneous dinners, and endless laughter. Sean was attentive, affectionate, always checking in, always making me feel like I mattered. I trusted him completely, sometimes maybe too much. I wanted to believe that love could be as simple as we made it seem. Over the years, we built a life together. 3 years ago, I moved into his apartment. We split some expenses, but with my work schedule and part-time schooling, Sean carried most of the financial load. I didn't mind. I contributed in ways I could, keeping the home organized, cooking meals, making the apartment feel like a sanctuary. I encouraged his social life, never wanting to restrict him, and he did the same for me. But there were small, almost imperceptible signs I overlooked. The way he sometimes seemed distracted when I asked about his weekend plans, or how friends hinted at parties I wasn't invited to. I brushed them off. He's just busy, I told myself. He's tired from work. He's only human. I thought I knew him. I thought I could read him. My relationship with his family was cordial but cautious. His sister Mara was warm but protective. His parents expected me to fit into their image of the ideal partner, someone stable, responsible, nurturing. But I thought I'd earned their trust over time. We celebrated holidays together, shared dinners, exchanged gifts. I truly believed I was part of this family. Looking back now, I can see how easy it was for Sean to weave his lies into our lives without detection. I was focused on school, work, and building a future for us. I trusted him utterly, gave him the benefit of the doubt, and never suspected he would betray me in such a calculated way. He had always seemed so social, going out with friends, attending gatherings. yet always assured me nothing would come between us. I never questioned it. I never imagined that while I was studying late into the night, paying bills, and keeping our home together, he might be living an entirely separate life, one that existed parallel to ours, hidden in plain sight. Even our little routines now feel like echoes of a past life. The way he would make coffee in the morning while I showered, the shared silence during late night shows, the comfort of having someone to return home to. I cherished those moments. I thought they were mutual, genuine. I thought we were building a future together, step by step. And yet, the cracks were there all along, small but persistent. I just didn't see them until the foundation collapsed beneath me. At first, it was little things, tiny discrepancies that I brushed off as misunderstandings or fatigue. Sean started being busy on weekends he once had reserved for us. Texts went unanswered for hours. He laughed a little too easily at someone else's jokes and group photos I'd see on social media. I tried to tell myself I was imagining things. I didn't want to be the jealous, paranoid girlfriend. Friends occasionally dropped comments that felt harmless, but gnawed at me. Was Sean really at that concert with you? Or someone else? One friend asked casually, and I laughed, trying to shrug it off. But the seed of doubt had been planted. It grew slowly, gnawing at the edges of my trust. Then there were family interactions that didn't sit right. Mara, Sean's sister, would call him more often than necessary, sharing updates about her life, checking in, asking me about me, but always with a certain hesitation, as though she was testing the waters, seeing what I knew and what I didn't. His parents started making subtle comments about gaps in his schedule, joking about how he needed more independence. At the time, I thought it was teasing. I now know it was observation, a reflection of the whispers they'd been hearing about Sean's secret life. Even Sean himself changed in small, almost imperceptible ways. He became more guarded about his phone, suddenly protective of his social media. He claimed he was just tired, just busy, but there was a flicker of defensiveness in his eyes I hadn't seen before. And the way he smiled sometimes, it was a little too practiced, a little too careful, like he was rehearsing for someone else. I remember one evening, sitting on the couch with him, noticing him chuckle at a text while trying to hide it. "Who's that?" I asked casually, pretending not to care. "Just a friend from work," he said quickly, a hint of tension in his voice. "Nothing to worry about." At the time, I believed him. I wanted to believe him. I always wanted to believe the best in people I loved. But deep down, a small voice whispered unease, a shadow I tried to ignore. The atmosphere in our home began to shift imperceptibly. Nights that used to be filled with laughter became quiet. Meals once shared in conversation were now eaten in silence. Even Rusty seemed to sense it. His normally bright eyes would follow Sean with unease, sensing a tension I could not yet name. I found myself replaying little incidents, analyzing them over and over. The sudden weekend trips he forgot to mention, the subtle evasions about his whereabouts, the hints from friends and family. I began to question my perception of reality. Was I being paranoid, or was something truly wrong? Then came the moment that finally shattered my tentative denial. A mutual friend posted photos from a birthday party Sean had attended while I thought he was out of town for a college reunion with his friends. And there he was, in the background, close, intimate, smiling with a woman I didn't know. My stomach dropped. My hands went cold. I stared at the screen for what felt like an eternity, heart pounding, mind racing. The puzzle pieces I had been trying to dismiss were starting to fit together, and the picture they formed was terrifying. I had glimpsed a life I wasn't part of, a reality I had no control over. The seed of conflict had grown into a sprouting storm, and I knew, deep down, that this was only the beginning. It was late at night when I finally saw it, the undeniable proof that the life I thought I shared with Sean was a lie. I had been scrolling through social media, a habit born from unease, trying to confirm what my instincts already whispered. And there it was, clear as daylight. Photographs of him with Richard, smiling, laughing, intimate, while I had been working nights, paying bills, keeping our home intact. My hands shook, my chest tightened, and the room felt suddenly too small. I sank into the armchair, trying to breathe, but the air felt thick, heavy. Every image was a dagger. Birthday parties, coffee dates, concerts, all during the times he told me he was busy with friends or out of town. I felt dizzy, nauseous. It was surreal, my life, my efforts, my love, it had all been background scenery for someone else's performance. I called Knox immediately, our mutual friend who had posted one of the photos. Knox, what is this? My voice trembled, though I tried to keep it steady. Whoa, I thought you guys broke up months ago, he said, his tone bewildered. I didn't know you were still together. She's been bringing Richard everywhere since February. Did you guys get back together? I felt like the world was tipping sideways. Break up. Months ago? Knox, we live together. We've been together. Just last week we were planning a vacation. What are you talking about? He hesitated. Sean, she's been telling everyone you broke up in February. Said it was mutual. You were figuring out living arrangements. She's single, dating around. No one realized you didn't know. I sank to the floor, gripping my phone as if it could anchor me to reality. My apartment, my shared life, my nightly routines, they had all been a lie in Sean's carefully constructed story. And he had done it for months, manipulating everyone around me while I believed in us. I spent hours digging through social media, cross-referencing posts, dates, locations. Every girls' night or college weekend trip was actually a date with Richard. Every casual photo posted with friends masked an intimate moment I wasn't part of. And the cruelest part? He looked happier in those images than he had in months with me, like he was thriving in a world where I didn't exist. Then I found something that made my blood boil. Dating app profiles using pictures from our relationship, photos from trips we had taken together, captions implying a carefree, single life, with me cropped out. I had been living with someone using our shared life as a promotional tool to find a replacement for me. The realization hit me in waves. I felt betrayed, humiliated, enraged, and heartbroken all at once. Every small doubt, every subtle inconsistency, every nagging feeling I had brushed aside now made sense. He hadn't been confused. He hadn't been busy. He had been living a double life, meticulously, for months. I called Mara, Sean's sister, hoping she might shed light on the madness. Mara, I need to know the truth, I whispered, tears prickling at the corners of my eyes. Has Sean been lying? Her silence was telling. Oh, God, This is really awkward. He told me you broke up because you were too controlling, that you were making him feel trapped. Her voice cracked. I didn't know how much was true until now. I felt my knees weaken. Controlling? Mara, I encouraged him to have a social life. I've paid for Uber rides, so he's safe at night. I've supported him. Nothing he says is true. She hesitated. He said you were still figuring out living arrangements, but he claimed he was single. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. Everything collided in my mind. The betrayal, the lies, the manipulation, the months of deceit. And with that, a clarity emerged. I had been living with a stranger for 6 years, and now I had to decide, would I let him continue, or would I take control of my life, even if it meant tearing apart the foundation of everything I knew? I felt a storm inside me, one I knew would not subside until action was taken. I was shaking, exhausted, but there was no turning back. The truth was out, and it demanded a response. I sat on the edge of my bed, the phone still clutched in my trembling hand, staring at the wall as if the answers might appear there. My mind was a cyclone of thoughts: rage, disbelief, sorrow, confusion. How could someone I trusted so completely orchestrate a lie so carefully, for so long, right under my nose? I felt violated, not just emotionally, but in every corner of my life. The home we shared, the meals, the bills, even the quiet mornings with Rusty, everything had been tainted by his deception. Yet, amid the anger and hurt, a small, insistent voice whispered, "Don't lose yourself in this. Don't give him that power." I replayed every interaction we'd had in the past months. Every text, every girls' night he supposedly encouraged, every weekend trip he had planned. I analyzed them like evidence in a case. Had I missed signs? Could I have prevented this? The answer, I realized, was no. I hadn't been blind. I had been trusting. And that trust had been weaponized against me. But the most difficult part wasn't anger. It was disbelief at how calculated it all had been. He had created a parallel life, dating, socializing, even using our shared memories to craft a story for others, telling friends and family that we had broken up. I had been paying rent, cooking meals, sleeping beside him, living as if we were partners in everything. And all along, he'd been planning his exit strategy, leaving me as the unwitting caretaker of his life while pursuing another. Tears came then, unbidden, burning behind my eyes. I allowed myself a moment to grieve, not for him, not even for the relationship, but for the betrayal itself, for the person I thought I knew, and the stark, cruel reality of who he truly was. I felt violated in the most intimate sense. My trust, my home, my heart, all had been manipulated. And yet, amid the turmoil, a thread of resolve began to form. I couldn't let this define me. I wouldn't allow him to dictate my worth or manipulate the narrative any longer. My responsibility wasn't just to myself, but to the life I had built independently. My job, my studies, Rusty, my finances. These were mine, untouched by his lies. I decided to confront the situation with intention, not emotion. No screaming, no irrational blame. I needed clarity, evidence, control. My first call was to Mara, his sister, the one person I thought might understand and possibly offer insight into the depth of his deception. "Mara, I know there's been a lie," I said quietly, voice shaking but firm. "Tell me the truth. I need to know everything. No sugarcoating, no excuses." Her hesitation was telling. "He told me you were controlling, that you made him feel trapped, that you were the reason things ended." Her voice faltered, guilt threaded through her words. I clenched my fists, heart racing. "Controlling? I've never controlled him. I've supported him. I've encouraged him to have a life outside of us. Everything he said is false." I felt a bitter, cold clarity. This wasn't a misunderstanding, not a lapse in judgment or a momentary mistake. This was systematic, calculated deception, and now it was my turn to act. I would need to untangle my life from his, reclaim my space, my dignity, my narrative. The weight of the coming confrontation pressed down on me. I didn't know how he would react or what resistance he would muster. But I knew this. I would not be the passive participant in someone else's manipulation any longer. I would take control, even if it meant walking away from the life I thought I knew, even if it hurt more than I could imagine. I took a deep, steadying breath, letting the resolve wash over me. The first step was understanding the full scope of his betrayal, and then I would plan my exit. Calmly, deliberately, methodically. My life, my choices, my dignity, they were mine, and I intended to take them back. The following days felt like living in a pressure cooker. Every interaction, every phone call, every message carried the weight of betrayal. I had moved out of our shared apartment temporarily, staying with Wade, my coworker and longtime friend. His support was invaluable, practical, and steady, a grounding force amid the storm of emotions. But Sean wasn't done. His family, particularly Mara, had unknowingly become a battlefield. They had been caught between my version and his carefully curated narrative. Mara's initial hesitation gave way to uncomfortable confessions, little admissions about Sean's stories, the half-truths he had spun to justify his absence. "He said you guys broke up because you were controlling," Mara repeated, guilt heavy in her voice. I didn't realize it wasn't true." I felt my blood boil and my chest tighten simultaneously. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was manipulation, sustained and deliberate. Every lie Sean had told now had ripple effects, influencing his family's perception of me, alienating friends, and leaving me as the unseen victim. I began to systematically document everything: messages, social media posts, photos, dating app profiles, evidence of his double life. Each screenshot, each time-stamped post, added fuel to my growing certainty that I needed to reclaim my life and confront the reality head-on. But the more I uncovered, the more enraging the picture became. He had been meticulous. Every weekend girls' trip, every night out with friends, every casual text to me about his busy schedule had been carefully timed to maintain appearances, while he built his parallel life with Richard. And now, friends were starting to receive calls and messages from him, spun to manipulate their sympathies. "She abandoned me, left me with bills, and took everything," he claimed. Knox, however, was an ally. He listened without judgment as I laid out the evidence, his anger matching mine. "I had no idea," he said, shaking his head. I can't believe he tried to rewrite everything. People need to know the truth. Together, we contacted mutual friends, showing them indisputable evidence, dating app profiles, photos, and messages. The response was immediate. People stopped taking Sean's side, disbelief turning quickly into judgment. Even at work, I could feel the tension. My colleagues knew something was wrong. I explained briefly that I was dealing with a personal situation, but nothing prepared me for the night Sean appeared at the office. Security cameras caught him lingering in the parking lot, calling my phone repeatedly, trying to provoke a confrontation. The sight of him, desperate and calculating, only strengthened my resolve. I was not going back. I would not allow him to manipulate me in my own life. And then came the family intervention. His parents, confused and caught between loyalty and evidence, confronted me indirectly through Mara. They wanted explanations. They wanted to know if the months of absence and secrecy were really as I described. I presented the facts calmly, systematically, showing proof of his manipulations, lies, and deceit. Their initial disbelief turned into shock. Some expressed regret for having doubted me, while others recoiled at the calculated nature of his actions. This escalation reached its peak when Sean attempted to confront me in person at Wade's apartment. He knocked, shouted, pleaded, an emotional storm he thought could sway me back. But by then, I had grown stronger, mentally armored. I met his words with calm precision, dissecting his lies point by point, refusing to give him the leverage he craved. I saw the frustration in his eyes, the disbelief that his manipulation could be met not with desperation, but with boundary and truth. Through it all, I felt myself changing. The betrayal, the deception, the attempts to isolate me, they fueled a transformation. I was no longer the trusting, passive partner who overlooked red flags. I was vigilant, empowered, and determined to reclaim agency over my life. The chaos around me, the friends being caught in his web, the family grappling with evidence, his frantic attempts to control the narrative, only reinforced my clarity. By the end of the week, Sean's influence over my life had diminished. Friends were no longer being swayed by his half-truths. Mara had fully aligned with my reality, and I had moved closer to finalizing my own independent space. Each step, each boundary I enforced, reinforced the lesson. No one has the right to manipulate your life while you invest in them. And the storm, though exhausting, had ignited a strength I hadn't realized I possessed. By midweek, the exhaustion had begun to settle into my bones. Physically, I was drained from packing, moving, documenting evidence, and attending to the smallest details of disentangling my life from Sean's. Emotionally, I was a raw nerve. Every time my phone buzzed, my heart jumped, fearing another manipulative message, another desperate plea, another lie. Sitting alone in Wade's modest apartment, the walls felt too close, the quiet too oppressive. Rusty curled at my feet, his presence a small comfort in the vast emptiness I now felt. But even his warmth couldn't erase the gnawing sense of betrayal, of having been replaced in a life I thought was ours. I couldn't stop thinking about the months, the years, the mornings I had woken up beside him, believing in us, in the future we were building together. And all the while he was living another life, laughing with someone else, using me as a stepping stone. I replayed our last few months over and over, every text I sent asking how his day was, every message confirming plans, every smile I offered after a long night at work. Each now felt like a cruel joke played at my expense. My self-esteem, which I had built slowly over the years through work, school, and small victories, felt like it had been dismantled overnight. The loneliness was suffocating. I couldn't talk to anyone outside of Wade without fearing judgment or disbelief. Friends had started to pull back slightly, hesitant to involve themselves further, leaving me to face the raw core of my pain alone. The apartment, once a place of comfort, had been stripped of its warmth. It was now a temporary refuge, a place to sleep and plan, not to live. At night, the memories haunted me. I imagined him with Richard, laughing, touching, whispering. The images burned into my mind, relentless. I questioned my judgment, my worth, my ability to trust anyone again. Tears streamed down my face as I thought about the financial and emotional support I had given, the effort I had invested, and how easily it had all been taken for granted. I felt foolish, naive, and utterly betrayed. Even small tasks felt monumental. Preparing a simple meal, folding clothes, paying bills. Every action reminded me of the absence, of the betrayal, of the life I had thought was shared. The weight of carrying my own future alone, for the first time in years, pressed down on me. Fear of the unknown loomed larger than the relief of independence. And yet, somewhere in the depths of this darkness, a quiet, stubborn ember of defiance flickered. Though I felt broken, though my trust had been shattered, a part of me knew that this was the crucible where my strength would be forged. I had survived challenges before, but never a betrayal of this magnitude, of this intimacy. Sitting there, alone, staring at the dim glow of the city outside the window, I realized that this moment, as dark as it was necessary. It was the bottom, the point where I could either be crushed by his lies or rise above them, stronger and more self-aware. The first step to reclaiming my life would be to acknowledge the pain fully, to feel the betrayal, and to let it fuel a new kind of courage, one rooted in clarity, self-respect, and the unwavering commitment to never let someone manipulate my world again. I hugged Rusty tightly, my tears soaking into his fur. I whispered to myself, steadying my voice, "This is the lowest point, but it ends here. I am still me, I am still whole, and from here I will rise." The night I found the last piece of evidence, I felt a strange mix of dread and relief. It was in Richard's Instagram feed. Photos from a weekend trip, timestamps confirming what I already suspected. There they were, Sean and Richard, smiling, cozy, intertwined, in ways that made my stomach turn. I had known about Richard before, of course, but seeing concrete proof, undeniable proof, was like a hammer to the chest. But as the shock subsided, a clarity emerged. I wasn't just hurt, I was being given a choice. I could let this destroy me, continue to obsess over the betrayal, the lies, the manipulation, or I could act. And for the first time in weeks, I felt the stirring of power, of control over my own life. I sat down with Mara that evening. We spoke quietly, the apartment dimly lit, Rusty at my side. I laid out the evidence, piece by piece, messages, photos, posts, the timeline of deception. Mara's eyes widened with every revelation. "I had no idea it was this extensive," she admitted. Her voice was low, almost fearful, as if speaking it aloud made the situation real. "I need you to understand," I said firmly. "This isn't just a relationship ending. This is a life I've been building being used as a prop in someone else's story. And I can't allow that to continue. Not in my life, not in my mind, not in my home." Her face softened. "You're right. You've been manipulated, but you're not powerless. You can take back control." Her words cemented what I already knew. I didn't have to engage in his drama anymore. I didn't have to justify myself to him or anyone else. I didn't have to fight for a relationship that had been built on lies. The realization was liberating, even as it stung. I began to make concrete plans. First, I would finalize my independence, my apartment, my finances, my dog, my space. Then, I would ensure that the truth was known to those who mattered, mutual friends, family, and anyone who might be misled by Sean's narrative. I would act decisively, methodically, without emotion clouding my judgment. That night, as I organized my documents and messages, I felt a profound shift. The rage, the heartbreak, the loneliness, they hadn't disappeared, but they had transformed into something I could wield. I was no longer just a victim. I was a strategist, a protector of my own life, reclaiming what was mine. By morning, I had drafted a clear plan: remove all my belongings from the shared spaces, sever financial ties, block Sean's contact, inform mutual friends of the truth with evidence, and establish my own boundaries firmly. Each step I wrote down was a declaration. I am no longer under his influence. I am reclaiming my life. I also realized something more important. The betrayal wasn't a reflection of my worth. Sean's actions were about him, not me. I had been honest, supportive, and loving, even when it wasn't reciprocated. That truth, simple, undeniable, was empowering. For the first time in weeks, I felt the stirrings of pride in myself, pride in my choices, pride in the person I refused to let him define. For the first time in months, I slept through the night without anxiety, without the fear of his manipulations creeping into my reality. I had faced the worst, and I had emerged not broken, but whole, deliberate, empowered. This turning point was not just the end of a relationship, it was the beginning of reclaiming my autonomy, my dignity, and my self-respect. And as I looked at Rusty curled up beside me, a quiet smile tugged at my lips. For the first time, I felt ready to step into a future that was truly mine. The aftermath of my departure was almost surreal. The careful, controlled chaos Sean had cultivated for himself began to unravel almost immediately. Friends who had been unknowingly caught in his web of lies started to see the truth piece by piece. Screenshots, posts, timelines, messages, all undeniable evidence of his deception, left no room for doubt. Knox, Mara, and a few of my closest friends helped disseminate the facts. At first, Sean tried to spin it. She overreacted. She's lying about everything. I'm the real victim here. But each attempt was met with the cold, hard proof I had painstakingly collected. The response from mutual friends was unanimous: disbelief, then disappointment, then a growing sense of betrayal on their side for having been misled. I watched from a distance as Sean's carefully constructed image collapsed. Invitations he had expected to receive, opportunities for social gatherings, and even casual trust among friends began to evaporate. People who had once admired his charm and confidence now questioned his integrity. Conversations I didn't even initiate were being had about his duplicity. His credibility had crumbled faster than I could have imagined. Family dynamics shifted as well. Mara had fully aligned with me, having seen the evidence firsthand and understood the full extent of his manipulations. She and her mother refused any further financial or emotional support for Sean. In a family that had once been a source of pressure on me, the tables had turned. Sean had lost not only me, but the subtle backing he had counted on from his relatives. Even at his workplace, whispers began to circulate. Mutual acquaintances, people who had once sided with him, now approached with caution. He was suddenly isolated, the alliances he had relied on fractured by the truth of his actions. It was strange, almost cinematic, to see the consequences of someone's choices unfold so transparently, yet I felt no gloating in it. My satisfaction was quiet, grounded in the knowledge that I had protected myself and exposed the truth without stooping to manipulation or revenge. Meanwhile, I settled into my new space with an unusual sense of calm. My studio apartment, small but entirely mine, became a sanctuary. Rusty thrived in the absence of tension, and I found peace in the routines I established for myself, paying my own bills, cooking my own meals, creating a life that was not defined by anyone else's deception. When Sean attempted to reach me, texts, calls, even showing up at locations I frequented, I remained steadfast. Each attempt to manipulate, plead, or provoke was met with silence or polite firmness. I did not engage, did not argue, did not justify myself. My boundaries were clear: my life, my rules, my space. Over time, the people who truly mattered recognized the truth. Friends who had been hesitant at first came forward to affirm their support. Mara and her mother reiterated their stance: honesty and self-reliance above all. Even Knox, who had been a witness and ally, expressed his relief that I had maintained my dignity and refused to let Sean's actions define me. Interestingly, Sean's attempt to maintain control over the narrative backfired completely. His new relationship with Richard, which he had expected to flourish while I was removed from the equation, faltered as the truth came to light. Richard, confronted with the extent of manipulation, began distancing himself. What Sean had meticulously planned as a seamless transition into a new life had collapsed, leaving him isolated, frustrated, and confronted with the reality that deception has consequences. In contrast, I moved forward quietly, deliberately. My focus was no longer on Sean, no longer on the betrayal, but on the life I was rebuilding from the ground up. Each day brought small victories: paying my own bills without fear, creating a home free from lies, reconnecting with friends who had truly supported me. The liberation was profound, and it came with the knowledge that the truth, once revealed, carries its own justice. By the end of this fallout, Sean had lost almost everything he had relied upon: trust, relationships, and credibility. Meanwhile, I had gained clarity, self-respect, and a sense of control that I had not felt for years. There was no triumph in revenge, no gloating, only a steady, deep satisfaction in reclaiming my life, in walking away without compromising my values or integrity, and in knowing that the consequences of dishonesty and manipulation had found their mark naturally. It was a quiet, steady closure, the chaos behind me, the path ahead illuminated by the lessons of betrayal and self-empowerment. I was no longer the girl who had been blindsided, manipulated, or silenced. I was whole, grounded, and finally free. Sitting in my new apartment, sunlight streaming through the blinds, I finally felt the quiet strength of closure. Rusty snoozed beside me, the familiar rhythm of his breathing grounding me in the present. The turmoil, the lies, the betrayals, they were all behind me now. I had survived the storm, and more importantly, I had emerged stronger, wiser, and unshakably in control of my own life. The hardest lesson I learned wasn't just about deceit or betrayal, it was about self-worth. For too long, I had measured my value by someone else's treatment of me, by their promises, by their lies of convenience. I realized that no relationship, no matter how long or intense, can define your sense of self. Trust, honesty, and mutual respect are not optional. They are the foundation of any connection worth keeping. I also learned the power of boundaries. Walking away wasn't easy, and it wasn't without pain. But by asserting my limits, refusing to be a pawn in someone else's schemes, I reclaimed my autonomy. True strength, I discovered, is not about control over others. It's control over yourself, your choices, and your life. As I settled into this new chapter, I allowed myself to hope again, not for Sean, not for validation, but for life on my terms. I nurtured friendships that mattered, invested in my education and career, and cherished the small joys, quiet mornings, walks with Rusty, the sense of safety and freedom that comes from knowing I am accountable only to myself. To anyone watching this story unfold, value yourself, trust your instincts, guard your heart, but don't close it. The right people won't use you as a safety net or a stepping stone. They will honor you, support you, and walk beside you in honesty. And when betrayal comes, as it sometimes will, remember that your response defines you, not the actions of the betrayer. I left the past behind, not with bitterness, but with clarity and resolve. I am not just surviving. I am living, growing, and thriving. My story doesn't end with someone else's lies. It begins with my courage to rise above them. And in that courage, I found freedom, dignity, and the unshakable truth. I am enough, and I always have been.